Welcome to my show. My name is Susan Rushton, and this is AhMuse. This is the show on which I get to, I'm thrilled to, I'm tickled to, I'm delighted to, I'm thrilled to talk to people who are visited by the Muse, who seek out the Muse. And I don't know if there's a history Muse from old Greek mythology, but if there isn't, there should be. And this guy should be that Muse. My guest today is Ralph Gibson, who is in charge of Placer County Museums. Thank you for coming back, Ralph. Thank you very much. And before I go any further, if you're interested in finding out more about Placer County Museums, please log on to placer.ca.gov/2489 museums, or just look for museums, Placer County Museums on Google, and you'll find them. And if you want to find out more about or learn more or hear from Ralph Gibson, his email is rgibson@placer.ca.gov. Well, welcome, Ralph.
I'm glad to be here.
Tickled to have you again. And before we go any further, we are talking to him I'm talking to him in December 2022, and he has on a Christmas shirt, a winter shirt, Christmassy. So tell me, how many other Christmassy, wintry shirts do you have?
I have about 22 Hawaiian-style Christmas shirts,
okay.
And I have about 22 Hawaiian-style Halloween shirts.
Okay.
And also just the run-of-the-mill Hawaiian shirts.
Okay. And any other seasonal shirts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the spring and summer, it's all Hawaiian style.
Okay.
So it just kind of breaks up from there, and then starting really in August, late August, early September, I start wearing my Halloween stuff. And then right after Halloween, switches right over to Christmas.
Okay, great. he's the Halloween and Christmas guy and Hawaiian and the Hawaiian shirt guy. That's cool. That's great. And your office is at 101 Maple Street?
Yes, in the historic courthouse.
Okay, at room 104
Mm-hmm.
on the first floor. And if you want to contact him, 530-889-6500.
Mm-hmm.
So, how long have you been involved
with the Placer County Museum?
The Placer County Museum.
I was hired in October of 2004.
Okay.
So this is my 18th year. I'm starting my 19th year already.
Okay. And I can imagine that you're going to keep going. Why are you involved with the Placer County Museums? Yes, they said we need somebody to run this, but
well, I didn't start off running it for Placer County. I was a curator of education when I was first hired in 2004.
Curator of education. What does that mean?
Well, we run all the education programs. We have a living history program at our Bernhardt Museum. It's one of our now 8 museums. We have a living history program there that targets 3rd grade. We also have community education programs. I started a 4th grade program on the Gold Rush, a Gold Rush program that now caters to the 4th grade students. And now we've, in the last year, we've acquired a new museum, the Fruitvale Schoolhouse Museum. And we also run living history there in the spring.
And Fruitvale?
Yes.
Where is that?
That's just outside of Lincoln.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, a little one-room schoolhouse, although they added a second room. It was built in 1888. The first class was in 1889, and in 1923 they added made a little addition to make 2 schoolrooms. And,
2.
But we still have, you can still see the original one-room schoolhouse,
wow.
And then there's this little addition. So that's been we had our living history there last spring for the first time, and we're booked solid going into the next spring. So.
Booked solid. Who?
That means as far as our staffing, like we can't put any more days in there. We're as full as we can get.
Okay, and tell me who are the type of people who come looking at this one-room schoolhouse, learning more about it?
Yeah, well, we're open right now because we're just again this is still kind of new. We're open the second Sunday of the month, noon to 4, and we get people from all over that just want to experience that one room schoolhouse.
Huh.
We've got the old style desks. We've still got the original slate in the back. We have the teacher's desk.
Wow.
We have some displays on the walls. So yeah, it's a really neat place. If you've never been to a one room schoolhouse, it's
Yeah.
one to visit because there are very few of those left.
Yes, yes. It was. Well, I guess it's important to know. Yes, not. I guess. Excuse me. It is important to know how things were,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also important that things improve. One room schoolhouses must have been tight.
Yeah, tight. We're talking a wood stove,
Mm.
no air conditioning,
Yeah.
lots of windows, so you could open the windows up. Tall ceilings because you get the heat to move up to the ceiling.
Yeah.
But yeah, still, you would have all these combined grades, and so that must have been pretty tough.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. But you were not in the education section long, apparently.
For about a year, and then I was promoted to program manager, which is really the number 2 underneath the museum's administrator. And I was there until the museum's administrator retired in May of 2013.
Okay.
And then I took over as interim museum's administrator, and then the next year was permanently hired as a museum's administrator.
Good.
2014.
And you aimed for that.
Yes.
What about your since we're talking about past
Mhm.
people, our past? What about your past? How did you get involved to begin with in a county's history?
Okay. Well, I'm from California. I grew
Okay.
up in Lake County on the other side of the valley. And I went to the little Lake County Yuba College campus and got interested in archaeology and history and transferred to CSU Stanislaus in Turlock. And I got my bachelor's degree in anthropology, archaeology. And from there, I was looking at graduate programs in New Mexico State. Had just hired 3 young archaeology professors, and they were all out in the field and doing field work. And I thought that's where I want to go, so I went to New Mexico State and got my master's degree in archaeology. But at the same time, my first day on campus, I needed to find a job. And there was a posting, and it said University Museum wants to hire an assistant curator, archaeology experience necessary. So I thought, well, that's me. So
Yeah.
I interviewed, got the job, and that kind of put me in the museum field. And actually, that was one of my concentrations in anthropology. It's prehistoric archaeology and museum studies.
Yeah. And it sounds like the more you did, the more you did.
Yeah, and I was working in the University Museum for all 2.5 years. I was a graduate student there, and then I was hired as a curator of a house museum in Texas, in Wichita Falls, Texas. So I spent about 3 years there running this house museum in Texas. But I was really wanting to get back to California, and just started looking at job postings, and the curator of education job popped up, and I came back to California to interview and was hired, and the rest is history.
Great. Yes, I can imagine you say that a lot. The rest is history.
Yeah.
Sure. How have you changed the museums in the time of your being? And before you answer that, I said to you before we started taping that things have changed.
Mm-hmm.
When I first arrived here, I wasn't really aware of events or activities in our local museums, and now I'm hearing about them almost all the time and anticipating them also.
Yes.
Tell me how you got that started.
Well, the first thing, and it really started with my predecessor, Melanie Barton, who unfortunately passed away in 2020. But she started really developing our staff and bringing on board experienced museum professionals. And I've continued that. And so we've got a really good staff behind us. They've all got lots of experience and really know their stuff. They are true museum professionals, and they love their job and they're good at it. And it's through that dynamic, I think, that's really helped. But one thing that really happened, I think, was when we had the lockdown on COVID. While you would think, because the brick and mortar museums had to close, that would sort of shelter us and kind of make us kind of slink away in the shadows, it didn't. What happened
I like
was
that, slink away in the shadows. But
what
didn't happen. Good.
Yeah, but what happened was we then turned our focus to something we'd always wanted to do but didn't have the time, and that was creating a wider online presence. And so we started, instead of doing exhibits in a museum, we started doing really in-depth research reports and exhibits that we just put online. Really cool artifact highlights, what we call spark pages, which is sort of a dramatic way to take a PDF and like give it some animation as you scroll through, and pictures kind of move a little bit or kind of focus in as you scroll down. It kind of makes it more of a moving experience. We started creating some of those, and all of a sudden, and more of a social media, outlook too. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. With all those combined, within a year during the lockdown, we reached over 1 million views on everything that we've done. With a small little museum system, and so
wow.
So we just kind of kept that going, and then once our museums were able to open, we still kind of kept a foot in those platforms, and that just gave us a greater visibility when most museums just kind of were not there.
How wise of you guys. And how
that was
aiming toward fun and entertainment. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's great. That's great. And and also before we started taping, I asked you if you might be interested in if the organization might be interested in having its own TV show, and you said, well, yeah, but we're running out of free time, and that's what it is. That's what's causes that.
And now we're in both places. We're creating exhibits. We're going back to our programs, educational programs, community education programs, and we're doing this online stuff. That it does. It takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah, and a lot of enthusiasm.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and people who know exactly what they're doing and how to do it. Mm-hmm. What if a person these are paid employees?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so there are paid employees and there are volunteers.
Oh yes.
Tell me about the volunteers. What do the volunteers do, and how do they?
Well, number one, they keep our museums open. Our staff doesn't sit in a museum and welcome the public as much anymore. We have volunteers that do that for us, because we're behind the scenes building the exhibits, doing the research, and working with the public behind the scenes on research requests and those kinds of things from our archives. But our volunteers, they keep our museums open. They're the ones that give the tours to the public and to schools. They are also the ones that do a lot of the research with the archivists at our Archives and Research Center. We even have volunteers that help with collections, cleaning artifacts, and we have one person that volunteers at collections, and she's an expert on dolls. We have a lot of dolls in our collection, so we get to pick her brain a little bit on what she knows about dolls, but also she gets to work with something she loves. So
sure.
So it's a win-win all the way around.
So if one wants to volunteer, one should contact the museum?
Yes, just contact the museum. Just call the main number, or on our website there are links to volunteering and staff emails. They can also email me directly. They can, however they want to do it.
Okay.
We'll find the right person to contact and set up an appointment to meet with them.
So I can imagine that some ways of volunteering is being with people.
Yes.
Every time, all the time when you're volunteering. So if you want to be with people and greet people and share what you know and hear what they have to say, and look at this and look at this and look at this, and isn't this wonderful? Or go over there and you'll find blah blah blah. I have a friend who does work all by himself volunteering, uh, making newspapers, old newspapers, readable.
Ralph.
Ralph,
Yeah.
yeah, and so he's alone. So there are several ways to volunteer. You can do stuff by yourself, or you can do stuff with other people.
And no experience is necessary. We train you. You know, you don't need to know the history of the area to volunteer. Even if you want to share that history, we will teach you that history, and you practice it, and you work with other docents and staff to refine it and get to a point where you feel confident sharing that history with people.
Great.
Yeah, it's about a 10-week training program in total.
Wonderful.
And that doesn't include the shadowing where you get to practice. And you know, no one ever just one day you're on the schedule and you're by yourself. You let us know when you are comfortable enough to be a permanent person on the schedule and not just a shadower.
Okay. So one of these, well, at least a couple of these volunteer or situations are not inside for the most part, but outside. One of them is the annual Halloween, late October.
We do, well, even in early October, we have our Old Auburn Cemetery tour.
Yeah.
And that's, most of that are our volunteers are out there. They learn a person that was very important in our history, and they portray that person as part of the cemetery tour. We also work with Melanie Hall, and she's the one that organized and started the Old Auburn Ghost Tours. And a lot
That's
of our
what
volunteers,
Old Auburn Ghost Tours.
Yes, Melanie's she's a boy, and she's a dynamo when it comes to organization and getting different groups to work together to create something. And a lot of our volunteers, our docents, are portray people on the ghost tour.
Wow. Okay. So, how much of this is your doing? Is it
Of what?
All of it. All of it. It's you found people.
Well, I always wanted to do the cemetery tour, but I basically planted the seed. We have a volunteer, Carol Kramer, who's a retired fourth grade teacher, and she's sort of taken the mantle of organizing it. But her and I worked very closely together on how on doing it. Number one, because I always wanted to do it. And she was the person I always talked to. I said we need to do an Old Auburn Cemetery tour. So once I was in charge, that was the first thing I started planning was an Old Auburn Cemetery tour with Carol, and she really took it over and really refined it. She's got that thing so well organized that when you're there on that day, we had over 400 people at the last cemetery tour. That's a one day in 2.5 hours, over 400 people, and it didn't feel like it. In fact, every one of the actors said that wasn't 400 people, but we were running the clicker right at the gate. It was 400. It was
wow.
Over 400. So it ran so smoothly, it didn't even feel like it was that many people at one time, because it was just kind of spread out. But the way it was organized, it just flowed really smoothly. It was really fun. So October's a fun month. We have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We have the 3 ghost tour, actually 4 ghost tours this year, and the 1 cemetery tour.
Yes.
And we have an exhibit that we did this year in the Treasury, which is in the historic courthouse. That was our fall exhibit, and we did it on, it was called The Grave Affair, and it focused on death and death rituals in the Victorian into the Edwardian era. So it was a fun exhibit that was informative, and it kind of tied into these other events that we're doing. And that'll be an annual event. We will pop that exhibit in sometime in September every year and run it through at least Day of the Dead.
Wow. The Day of the Dead, which is
November 2nd.
2nd.
Yeah, All Saints Day is November 1st, but Day of the Dead is November 2nd.
Yeah.
I know, because I have a Day of the Dead shirt that I wear.
Well, of course you do.
Yeah.
So I think I can imagine lots of people, none of them involved with this, but people who live in the area thinking history. Oh, history. Oh boy. Oh yeah. Sure. But I look at your face when you talk about this stuff, and watch your hands be and you've been doing this for years, and you were excited about it at the beginning, and you're still excited about it.
Oh yes.
And it's not just stuffy, dusty ingredients to people who are stern because they can't smile because the cameras took so long. It's not just photographs. It's not just dust, is it?
Right.
It's
not.
These are stories of people who are still living. Apparently, that's certainly the message I'm getting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you say if you have a fall exhibit, which implies that you have a spring exhibit, a winter exhibit, a summer exhibit.
We have a Christmas exhibit that's in there now, a holiday exhibit that's really focuses on the courthouse really had its grand opening in 1898. So our period of interpretation there is kind of from that era on into we'll usually go to about like 1950, and so we've got an exhibit in there on the courthouse with lots of Christmas trees. We've got a case with some artifacts in it that would have been gifts back, and going
Sure.
back 100 or more years ago. That are kind of floating down on parachutes being dropped from Santa's sleigh. So it's just kind of a fun little exhibit that's in there. And in all those cases, in all those exhibits, we always try to give some sort of selfie opportunity, because that's something that a lot of people like to do now. They like to interact with exhibits.
Yeah.
We found a lot of people taking pictures in front of themselves in front of exhibits, and we thought, well, let's give them a place to do that.
Sure.
So for the Grave Affair exhibit, we actually had a casket you could pose in, standing up. And you would not believe it, people. And I don't know where they got it, but we had, in fact, saw a lot of kids do this. They do the mummy pose. Like, well, that's a mummy. That's not, I don't know where they're getting that, but they just naturally went to this,
Yeah.
which was funny, just kind of seeing everyone do that. For the Christmas exhibit, there's actually a sleigh that you can sit behind and pose in front of a winter
And do
scene.
this?
Well, yeah, if you wanted to. If you wanted to.
Okay. Why is this so important? Why are the museums important? Why is history important?
Well, history is important because it's part of our shared past, and it's
our
really,
shared past,
and it's something that we all need to at times reflect on and kind of. We've all made mistakes in our own life, and we learn from those mistakes. And it's the same thing with history. If you look back, you can learn from those other mistakes from the past, and sometimes see where the direction you're heading, and go, you know what, that's not it. We need to change something. So it's always good to look back and kind of correct the course every now and then, and because we do it all in our own life. If
we correct the course.
You burned your hand on a stove when you were 10, and you learned a stove is hot.
Yeah.
Simple lessons, but sometimes people, you get busy with your life and you just kind of forget. And sometimes you're on the road for so long, you don't know where you went off path. But yeah. And also museums and local history connects a community. If you walk through the old Auburn Cemetery, and I always tell people, when you move to a new area, walk through the cemetery. You're going to see names in that cemetery that you're going to see on streets, you're going to see on buildings, you're going to see on the names of blocks. So, your history's out there. And it's not just the people who have their name on the street, the people who have their name on a building, but also all those people that built that area. They're all out there.
Yeah, okay. Now, you were majoring in, I can't remember the word. It starts with A.
Anthropology.
Anthropology.
Yeah, archaeology is a subdiscipline of anthropology.
And anthropology is people.
Study of man, study of people.
Okay. You're doing that. That's your focus is anthropology and history of people. Okay. It's a charming thing that you're fascinated by the history of people. I like that. And it's also charming that you're focused, that you're urging others to be focused on what you are focused on.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to go back to the costumes these people wear.
Oh, yes.
Where do you get them? Where do they get them?
You know, a lot of our docents have acquired their own costumes. Some of them make their own costumes. They really are. In fact, we have a new volunteer that just started this year. Her whole focus is costuming. So she loves to work in a museum where she gets to wear a costume every day because she loves the Victorian dress, the style of dress, and we do have a costume closet for docents. What we found is, sure, a new docent, say at our Bernhard Museum and our walking tour, those are the two really where you dress in period clothes, the two things we do, and also the cemetery tour and ghost tours. But we find that the docents that use a costume closet really only use it for maybe their first year, and by then they've acquired their one or more outfits that they'll wear when they're volunteering, just because they want to personalize what they've got.
Great.
And yeah, it's fun.
Do you ever participate in these?
Oh yeah, I've got derby. I've got a top hat, and I've got my clothing that I'll sometimes wear. When we do the Heritage Trail, which is a summer-long event, when we're at the Courthouse Museum, sometimes we'll reenact the first questioning of Alma Bell, the lady who famously shot her.
The first
questioning of Alma Bell, when she was questioned by the police after she was arrested for murdering her lover in 1909, Joe Armis. And she's a famous.
People had lovers in 1909.
That was Alma.
So okay.
So, and I'll wear I'll portray the district attorney, because we actually have the transcript of that questioning. So it's an accurate representation.
Wow. Okay. I have never seen you perform or.
I used to be a performer on the Ghost Tour.
Okay.
But I got too busy because I'm responsible for the security of the courthouse because I have it open.
Yeah.
And I'd be up on stage inside the gallery talking about the little boy that died, and I'd be portraying his father, the one that fell from the cupola of the courthouse, and I would be in the middle of my monologue, and I'd hear the front door open, and my security brain, half my brain is like, who is that? What are they doing?
Yeah.
While I'm trying to remember my lines.
Oh,
I just thought, that's too much. So I backed out. I got another volunteer, one of our docents, to cover that portion for me so I could just concentrate on keeping the courthouse secure.
Okay. Well, I have been talking to Ralph Gibson of Placer County Museums, and what's your position?
I'm the museum's administrator.
Museums administrator. If you want to learn more about the museum, go to 101 Maple Street, and you'll learn a little bit there. Go on to log on to placer.ca.gov/2489/museums, and you'll learn a wonderful lot of stuff. Ralph, I really appreciate your joining me today. I've had a wonderful time, and I need to at the museums some more.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for watching.